everybody, and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be diving into the mystery that is Six Flags Magic Mountain's next coaster. It's been pretty well documented that back in March of this year, markers were spotted in the Metropolis section of Six Flags Magic Mountain located in Valencia, California. However, Metropolis wasn't the only place that markers were spotted. There were many others found inside of the adjacent DC Universe area, and even a line of marked spots across the former plot of Green Lantern First Flight, as well as the park's splash boat ride, Tidal Wave. As many of you know, Green Lantern First Flight, introduced in 2011 for the park's 40th anniversary, was one of the most infamous coasters to ever debut at Magic Mountain. Many complained that it was either too extreme or flat out painful. Back in 2017, the coaster gave its last rides at Six Flags Magic Mountain and was removed in 2019 to relocate at La Ronde in Quebec, Canada, where it will hopefully have a better life, bringing enjoyment to guests. Something odd though is that the station for the coaster has remained nearly untouched since the track's removal, and with markers dotted around the building and surrounding area, it definitely seems as though something big is coming in the near future. So I figured, why not talk about the potential for the world record 20th coaster in the park's lineup. Now obviously the plot of markers may not be for a coaster or even a ride, and even if it is, we have no clue when it would open due to the COVID-19 pandemic plaguing ride openings slated for 2020 and 2021. So please remember that this is my opinion and in no way fact. I'm just a park lover trying to amuse myself while I can't visit any parks. So with that said, let's get our sleuthing caps on and find ourselves a potentially imaginary coaster. Recently, Six Flags as a whole has added or plans to add coasters from the following manufacturers: Mack Rides, Premier Rides, S&S Sansei, Zamperla, and Rocky Mountain Construction. The most common of which has been S&S and RMC, with the successful 40 free spins from S&S, as well as hybrid conversions and single rail Raptor coasters from RMC. Now on top of these additions for Six Flags over the past 3 seasons, Apocalypse at Six Flags America in Maryland opened to the public in 2019 as Firebird, after new floorless trains replaced the old stand-up trains for a nicely added revamp to the oldest B&M coaster in the world. Now, while B&M did provide the trains to Six Flags, I won't be counting them in the short list of companies due to Magic Mountain already housing 4 B&Ms. Plus, the remaining catalog of coaster models offered wouldn't give the park anything revolutionary that Six Flags Magic Mountain strives for. With that said, let's look into the coasters from Zamperla, Premier, Mack, S&S, and RMC. Six Flags Magic Mountain offers one Zamperla coaster and one Zamperla flat ride, Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers, which is the company's Family Gravity coaster model, and Crazanity, which is the company's Giga Discovery thrill ride. Both of these rides have been added in the past 5 years and have been crowd pleasers to kids and thrill seekers alike. Looking through Zamperla's coaster models, it seems apparent that the only models that would really be a good fit at the park are their spinning coasters, of which they have 4 kinds with cloned layouts. Six Flags Magic Mountain currently houses 2 Premier Rides coasters, being Full Throttle and the newly opened West Coast Racers. Looking through Premier's catalog, there really doesn't seem to be any coaster that would make sense at Magic Mountain due to the currently available models already existing at the park today. Unless Premier has a trick up their sleeve, I don't see the next coaster being manufactured by them. Mack Rides currently has no rides or coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain, but there seems to be many potential options for a coaster in the future. Between their Hyper Coaster, Mega Coaster, Big Dipper, Power Splash, and Extreme Spinning coaster models, all would be a great fit at the park and provide a different experience than currently offered. S&S Sansei currently has no rides at Six Flags Magic Mountain, but they have some of the most interesting, new, and innovative concepts on the market at the moment. That's without mentioning that over the past 5 years, more S&S coasters have been opened at Six Flags parks than any other company's products. Sure, most have been clones of the 4D free spin model, but I can say from experience they are a lot of fun and something I won't miss. Now, in addition to this model, Six Flags has added Max Force, a pneumatic launch coaster with 5 inversions and a powerful launch. Now, in addition to those models, they have unveiled new concepts in the steeplechase and axis coasters. All 4 of these models have the potential to be interesting new additions to Magic Mountain. RMC, one of the most intriguing companies for coasters today, and their first coaster isn't even a decade old. Rocky Mountain Construction currently has one coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain named Twisted Colossus. This coaster is a hybrid coaster, and for RMC, this means taking an existing wooden coaster and revamping it with a steel track. Now, while this is the main model for the company, they have begun to move in a new direction with their fairly new single rail model, otherwise known as the Raptor model. 2 of these coasters have opened, with the first at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, and currently a larger version of the coaster is being constructed at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey. RMC has constructed a total of 10 different coasters for Six Flags in the last 9 years, so I think it's safe to say that a Raptor should be added to this list. Now let's take a quick look at if these models have the potential to fit with the markers in place in the Metropolis and DC Universe areas, as well as with Green Lantern's station building. Starting with Zamperla, it gets remarkably clear that the 4 models on our list would not fit in the layout of the markers. Even if they were custom layouts of the typically cloned rides Zamperla makes, they would have to be much taller than usual to fill out the whole area. And to be quite frank, with this layout of markers being mostly in a straight line, there wouldn't be much spinning to be had. So I think it's reasonable to cross Zamperla off the list. Speaking of spinning, that leads us to Mock Rides. Now, a similar issue I see with their spinning coaster, while capable of filling out the space nicely, is that there would be minimal spinning to be had. I hate to say it, but I think the extreme spinning coaster just doesn't make sense here. On the other hand, the Mega Coaster and Big Dipper models would fill out this space. Although the Mega Coaster would be quite a tight fit, it could potentially work, whereas the Hyper Coaster would need more room to breathe to get over that 200-foot height. The last of these models is of course the Power Splash, and it lines up quite well with the markers and could fit in the space. The only problem is that Green Lantern's station building would definitely need to be majorly changed or removed entirely for this model to work. So for right now, I'm going to keep it on the list, but it's hanging on by a thread. S&S has quite a few options to choose from that could potentially work in this plot of land. Now, I think it's safe to say a 4D free spin just wouldn't work in the space, since it would only take up half of the marked land unless there was a custom layout made that was much longer and taller. Also, the station building would not work with the ride itself and would have to be modified greatly to work. This moves us to the steeplechase model. This coaster model does have a cloned layout as its original design, but none of these models exist in a park as of yet, and it would be able to fit the space with a custom layout and is small and capable enough to fill out that area while even potentially dueling. Next is of course the pneumatic launch coaster, like seen with Max Force. This model of coaster could fit in the area, but it would be a very tight squeeze, and the length of the ride would most likely be under 30 seconds due to a shorter and more fast-paced layout. The final model from S&S is the Axis Coaster. This model is also yet to see any physical representation within a park, but the original design is a cloned layout that would not fit in the space given it is too wide and short. However, a custom version could fit the space and end up being the first of its kind. Last but certainly not least, we find ourselves looking at the Raptor model from RMC. Eyeing this space, it's clear that the original layout would not fit in this space, but a slightly modified version of the model very similar to Jersey Devil Coaster would fit quite well. And of course, there is always the option of a custom layout too. As this ride would be the 20th coaster at the park, it should definitely fit that milestone achievement with new records or never before seen elements. So this is where we can really whittle down the possibilities to see what the future may have in store. With our 3 remaining mock rides models, it really is getting down to the wire. The Mega Coaster, while a good fit at the park, wouldn't gain any height, speed, or even airtime records for the model or any coaster in California, so it is definitely less likely. The Big Dipper suffers the same fate, sadly, and with only one model constructed years ago in Europe, this one also fails to make it all the way. This leads to the Power Splash model, and on its own, it has no discernible records, but would be the only launched water coaster in California. If this isn't enough though, a looping version would be the first of its kind in the world, but if this station comes into play and more buildings nearby end up not being on the chopping block, the space would still be a considerable issue. I think it's fair to say mock rides won't be working on a coaster for Magic Mountain, at least in this space. 3 models from SNS are still on the table and are all capable of attaining record-breaking feats. The Steeplechase could be the world's first triple or quadruple quasi-Mobius loop layout, with riders traversing a circuit 3 or 4 times while dueling friends. The pneumatic launch coaster could have the fastest acceleration in North America, while traversing an inversion-filled layout. And of course, the Axis coaster would be a world's first and unlike any coaster we've seen. All of these seem plausible with a customized ride course and interesting features that are rarely seen. One model from RMC started off in their category and now it ends with it. A Raptor in this space could be the longest, tallest, and fastest single rail coaster in the world and is far enough away from the other versions to really stand out in the Southern California coaster scene. I'll be honest, I am a bit biased when it comes to these coasters because they are currently my favorite coaster model and I'm so excited for any incarnation at any park. But a Raptor is something I could totally see at Magic Mountain in the next decade, and that would be a very fitting 20th coaster. With everything said, I've gotten an idea of a new roller coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain in the future. Are all 4 models going to be correct? Of course not. Could I go over more categories and get it down to 1 model being left as an option? Possibly. Is this video already long enough? Very much so. Do remember that these, of course, are my personal thoughts on a potential new coaster coming to the park, and that we really won't know anything about why those markers were placed for a very long time. What do you think the new coaster or ride or plumbing project will be? I'm super interested to see what you all think, and if you watched all the way till now, make sure to comment steeplechases are steeplechases, but new, and I'll give your comment a little heart. And of course, make sure to subscribe for more Six Flags and SoCal theme park content coming soon. But until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.